All right, y'all, in today's lesson, we are going to review what's called identifying like terms. So when we identify like terms, that is going to help us to do the next part, which is going to be combining like terms. So let's go ahead and look at today's vocabulary. The first one we have is variable, and that is the letter in an expression or an equation. And a lot of times we see the letter X when we're solving, but it could be any letter. Remember, the variable is going to be the unknown, and that's usually what we're solving for. So remember, an expression is something like 2x, where there's no equal sign. An equation is 2x equals 10. So with an expression, x could be anything. If I said 2x, once they tell me what x would represent, I'm going to multiply that by 2. But an equation, I'm going to go ahead and write that to help us out. So an example of an expression is 2x. So no matter what x is, we're going to multiply by 2, and then we can solve from there. So we're going to evaluate expressions, and we're going to solve equations. So if we have an equation that says 2x equals 10, then there's only one true value of x that we can multiply by with 2 to get to 10. So that's the difference between an expression with no equal sign, and we evaluate those, and equations with an equal sign, and that's when we are going to solve it. So that's when we're solving for one value of x. Just something to think about. So down here, that's why we color coordinated in blue. We have the variables. Terms are going to be the part of the expression equation. So 3x is a term, 2y, and then the 1 is a term. So that's going to be the parts of what's happening. The coefficient is here in red. That is the number in front of the variable. It could be a whole number, a decimal, a fraction. Anytime that number is in front of the variable, it is the coefficient. However, we could also have an example like this. If I said x was my variable, and I said divided by 3, the 3 is still technically the coefficient, because when we divide by 3, that's the same thing as multiplying by 1/3. So x divided by 1/3 is the same, x divided by 3 is the same thing as saying 1/3 times x. So just something to think about. A lot of times you're going to see that coefficient in front of the variable, but if you're dividing, that's going to be the coefficient. It's the number working with that variable, with that letter. The constant is just those regular numbers. And they could be decimals, fractions, whole numbers, integers, anything like that. That's just the number by itself. So, for example, in this situation, no matter what x and y represent, we would do 3 times whatever x is, then we would add the product of 2 times y, and you are constantly subtracting 1. So your x and your y can change because they can vary. That's what that stands for with the variable, that first part. But no matter what, the constant is just that regular number, what's happening. We're subtracting 1 each time. So really important to understand these vocabulary words, not only for our 7th and 8th grade math years, but moving on to high school when we're talking about algebra and so on and so forth. So let's use this terminology to help us identify like terms in an expression. So here's an introduction to it. For example, if I have these apples, 1, 2, 3, 4 apples, I can say that I have 4 apples, because they are all like each other. In this situation, if I have an apple and a triangle, I can't add these two together because they're not like one another. But I can see 1, 2, 3 apples. I can put those together because they are like each other. And I see triangles next, so I see 1, 2 triangles, so I can say 2 triangles. And lastly, I see 1 heart. So I can say and 1 heart. I was writing these out because I didn't want to attempt to try and draw these apples and they'd be all a little weird. So again, if they're like terms, you are only putting things together that are like one another. So think of that as a picture. We have 3 apples, 2 triangles, and 1 heart. Well, think about that visually when you look at this next part. Now again, the reason we're identifying like terms is so that we can put them or combine them together. Because, for example, in this expression, and remember this is an expression because there's no equal sign, if your teacher were to say, evaluate this expression when a is equal to 2, B is equal to 3, and moving on from there, you would have to do 4 times 2 plus 3 plus 3 times 2 plus 2 plus 2 plus 3 plus 4 times 3. That's a lot of work. So what you're doing is identifying like terms and putting them together helps us to where you're going to have to do a little bit, not necessarily fewer steps, but only having to multiply and then add them at the end one time. So let me show you how this works. So what I would suggest doing is using different colors or shapes. So I'm going to box my A's in this group. So there's no sign in front of the 4, so that's a positive 4. You want to box that plus sign because it helps you say it's a positive 3A. Because if it was subtracting 3A, remember subtracting a positive is the same thing as adding a negative. So if you guys just get in the habit of boxing that sign in front, it's saying it like it's a positive or negative. So we're going to put all the things that are like each other. So we're going to add all the A's with all the A's. Then I'm going to use a different color and shape for my B's. So I'm going to put all the B's together. So I'm using a square for the A's and a circle for the B's. It just kind of helps my brain organize it. Well, I can't put a 2 with the A's, and I can't put a 2 with the B's because a 2 is just that constant. That's just that number itself. I can only put the A's with the A's and the B's with the B's. Again, think about that to help you out. So I'm going to circle my B's. Then you can use the last color or shape or whatever you want to do. Just to kind of change it up, I'm going to do a triangle, or an attempt of a triangle. So I'm going to just do my constants in a purple triangle. Again, you don't necessarily have to do this each time. It's just to help us organize our information. So we want to put all the A's together. So if I have 4 A's plus 3 more A's, that's 7, plus A, that's 1A, you have 8 A's. Okay? Then we put all of our B's together. Well, if it just says B, that means 1B. So 1B, I can't add to the A groups. I can't add to the constants because those are just numbers. So 1B plus 4B is 5B. And then the last one is just the constant itself. So 2 plus 3 is 5. So what we've done by identifying these like terms helps us to then combine them. So now if my teacher were to say, okay, evaluate this expression when A is equal to 2 and B is equal to 3, you're only multiplying that number with A once, so 8 times 2, plus 5 times 3, plus 5. So instead of doing one step here with multiplying, so 1 step, 2 step, 3 steps by multiplying, then 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. That's about a 9-step problem. We've condensed that down to 1 step multiplying, 2 step multiplying, then adding, and then adding again. So you took that from a 9-step problem written this way to a 4-step problem written this way. These two are equivalent because we combined those like terms. Okay? Again, if you need to rewind the video just to kind of rehear this or reach out to your teacher to kind of see a little bit more, let us know where we can help you. But this is essentially what you're doing. So in today's assignment, you're going to have these mixed up terms. So if I have 2A, 2B, 2C, and 2, if you have an answer bank like this, we are putting things together that are like one another. So for example, for here, 2A's, think about what we could put here that are like the other A's. Can we put a -6? Nope, because a -6 is an integer. So the integer would go with the other integers, or the constants, we could say. So that's where that one goes. Then you have a -A. Well, the A's are going to go with the other A's. So we cross that out. So basically, you can only add A's with other A's, even if they're positive or negative. You can only add B's with other B's. So that's what you're going to be doing with this as an answer bank. And yours may be a little shortened just depending on the assignment you have, but that's what you guys are looking at. Okay? Now, when you do that, for example, they're going to have more here, but if you have 2A plus a -A, remember subtracting a positive is like, subtracting positive is like adding a negative. So if that were the situation, let me just give you kind of like a side example because I don't want to do that one problem with you. if we had 3a plus negative a minus 4a, I'm just making something up. Well, this is like 3a plus a negative a, so you could see it like this. Sometimes I'll write it like this. So if you have 3 a's combined with a negative, combined with another negative. Well, go left to right. So 3 minus 1 is 2. Okay? Or you can even think out that this way. 3 combined with a negative, well, the signs are opposite, we subtract, so 3 minus 1 is 2, and there's more positive, so 2a, however you see that. Then if I have 2a's combined with 4 negatives, you still use your combining integer rules, what we talked about in our previous lessons. So 2 combined with a negative 4, if you have 2, you can't take 4 positives away. So if I have 2 positives combined with 4 negatives, we have 0 pairs, and we have negative 2 left over, and you just bring down that variable, okay? So that's what you guys are going to be looking at as well. So not only on how to combine like terms, but reviewing those integer rules that we've talked about earlier. As always, good luck, and please let us know when you need help. Reach out to your teacher. That's what we're here for.